Speed optimization on Shopify can be kind of difficult sometimes. And a lot of times we're really focused on that page speed score number. I've talked at length about why it's more important to focus on the core web vitals instead. But one of the big wins that we can get today is helping improve those core web vitals, specifically the metric largest contentful paint. And because of how heavily it's weighted in the page speed score, you're also going to see some of your biggest improvements in your page speed score itself as well that way. So in order to do that, let's take a look at one quick trick on how to make this not only something that can be fixed, but easily accessible for merchants in the future while they're adding new content to pages. Let's check it out. So I want to give y'all an example here of what this metrics looks like. Now, granted, this 81, this is from running this locally, so obviously these numbers are going to look fantastic in here. But if you take a look at this 81, you might think that's great, right? We scroll down here, you can see though, their largest contentful paint, not a great load time, okay? And if you scroll down even further, we get this issue that the largest contentful paint image was lazily loaded. So that's something we obviously want to fix. Something that I do regularly for merchants, and then also obviously did it on my own site, was built in some controls here so that way we can opt in or out of lazy loading for this largest contentful image. Does it make a big deal of a difference? I mean, you tell me. Here's a real quick comparison when it's enabled versus when it's not enabled. So an 81 for when lazy loading is occurring in that largest contentful paint, and then a 93 when it's not enabled. And to verify real quick, we don't have that issue popping up as a potential problem. So in one of those, I enabled lazy loading for this largest contentful image, and then in another instance, we've got it turned off. And so you can see that there's some pretty big performance benefits to be found just by enabling or disabling lazy load during the course of that. So in order to do that on Shopify, we can take an example here in the Dawn theme. First, just real quick to show you why this is a really great performance win. You can see here, this is in version 10 for the Lighthorse scoring calculator. It's at 25%, okay? And pretty much as soon as the largest contentful metric was introduced, it's pretty much consistently been 25% of that weighted score, okay? So older versions didn't actually have this. First Meaningful Paint was one of the things that they recommended. It was kind of like a mixture between these two. And so since this has been around, it is one of the core web vital metrics, key core web vital metrics. If you want to learn more about that, I'll have this linked in the description. This talks about what the largest contentful paint, essentially right here, is what you want to pay attention to. It's the time of the largest image or text block visible within the viewport, so that initial above the fold load here relative to when the page first started loading. It goes on to talk a little bit more about this and things that you can optimize. For now, just understand what the metric is and that it's one of the key metrics that we need to focus on, both for a win for core web vitals, since it does show up as one of those that we need to focus on. And then as well, it's a great win for merchants because of that page speed score that everybody's so focused on. It's a very heavily weighted metric. So to give you an example here, we're going to work with just a general Shopify theme here. This is Dawn version 8.0. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make this really simple because right now there's some best practices involved where the images are all being lazy loaded, which again, best practice from the standpoint of a majority of your content is going to be below the fold. However, we want to build in some controls here where maybe we can turn that off for anything that's going to be above the fold. We probably don't want to call it something like largest contentful paint image or asset or something like that. We need to make this simple, easy enough for merchants who are going to use their own language to kind of describe this stuff. Above the fold is a pretty common tactic that I'll use just because most people, when you're talking to them, know what that's about. So real quick, let's jump into the code here, and we're just going to add a little checkbox here to conditionally turn that off and on. So if you scroll over down here into sections in your files, let's find the image with text. Okay. And I'm using the images with text, but you can obviously utilize this same technique for most of the sections where there's image assets and those sorts of things being loaded in, uh, this is a common technique that you can employ across here. And so I'm scrolling around. Whoops, got a little aggressive with my scroll here. We're going to try to find the image option in here. And you can see here that there is an image right here, and there is a lazy loading option. So, we're going to be using this here to display our image. So that's where we want to look at adding some controls. So let's scroll down, and we really want to put these controls in the main section settings because that's where the image itself is. So let's go back to the section. If you click into the section settings, that's how you set the image that's in here. It's not in a block or anything like that. So we're going to want to add that here. We'll probably want to add it somewhere. Let's choose maybe directly beneath some of these other specific items here. Like just right under the image might be the easiest thing to do. So here's our image picker. So what we want is to go ahead and add type checkbox ID. So maybe we want this to be on here. So we'll want to disable lazy load and then label. And then we'll say above the fold image. Okay. And just as simple as that. Don't forget your little comma here. And we'll go ahead and save. If you're wanting to add something in here to include some additional information about what this looks like, so we could add some additional content here, but for now, let's just make sure that this works. Go ahead and refresh the page. Okay, and you can see here that we do have an above the fold. We can check mark it off and on, but it doesn't look like we really are probably getting any kind of a benefit here, obviously because we haven't checked this into anything. We've not actually hooked this up to code anywhere. So let's dive back into the code here. And this is really simple when it's just like a simple image tag or whatever. But right now, what they're using is the new image tag filter option, in which case we're doing this all via liquid, which is okay. We can just do it this way as well. So if you want real simple, there's obviously better ways to write this, but we're going to do this the most simple way here with just a liquid conditional. So if section.settings.disable lazy load, which is what we called this earlier, right? And I like to go ahead and just go ahead and write all these guys out ahead of time, because otherwise I might accidentally forget to include these. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these, and this is all usually a lot prettier in the editor, so bear with me here while I fix some stuff so that way it's not too hard to look at. But essentially you want to just use the exact same liquid conditional here, okay? Or liquid tag, I'm sorry. But instead of loading equals lazy, let's just go ahead and pull this guy out. And so if it is set to disable the lazy load, we want to go ahead and render that same image tag here, but do it without the lazy load attribute versus otherwise. Let's go ahead and make sure that lazy load is included. Let's save. No errors. So far, so good. Okay. Oh, and I did forget something. Oh, in general, let's make this a little bit better. I'm going to scroll down. I'm just now thinking about this for the checkbox. Like, we want to set the default to false, okay? Because you don't want this to be accidentally saved to true for all images, because then that's going to be way harder for people to remember or have to check that for everything. So let's go ahead and just make sure that that's done. Go ahead and save here. And check this off. Okay, so far nothing's breaking. So let's take a look at this. Okie dokie. You can see I was running some tests in here. And let's just grab this image at first. So this is the standard image. We haven't used anything else yet at the moment. And you can see here, kind of, in the code that loading equals lazy has been added to this image. Okay, so it's working like as it has been before we added our customizations. So let's come in here though, and let's go ahead and say, hey, this is an above the fold image, and save. Okay, so far so good, nothing's broken. Let's do a refresh on our image here. And ooh, that felt a little faster. What do you think? Did we get rid of that lazy loading attribute? And yeah, we did. So you can see here that this is going to load in quicker and be a little bit better for that. So if you want to add this to other sections, you're going to follow a similar pattern. One of the ones that I like, if it's just a straight image tag, would be just using an unless tag or whatever wrapped around the lazy loading. That's real simple. Sorry, I was trying to do that in code. And so those are some other options that you could take a look at as far as making that a little bit easier. But otherwise, this is a real quick, very simple implementation for you to add. Again, you could make this a little bit more performant using liquid code, but this is the simplest, easiest implementation to get away with to see some really good key performance benefits here. So there you go. Hopefully that was a real quick, short, direct way for you to make some real significant performance benefits on a Shopify store. Real quick and easy win for performance there without having to do too much code. You can see just a simple checkbox, really easy to understand for merchants as well. I've found that it's very helpful for folks to include and helps give them a little bit more control over that as well. So hopefully that was helpful to you. I'd love to hear about any performance implementations that you've done yourself. Otherwise, I'll probably try to do a couple more of these for ones that I build into stores regularly here because I think this stuff is helpful. So hopefully you feel the same. Thanks.